What's going on, guys? It is a amazingly cold Sunday night, kind of winding down. I wanted to jump on here really quick and go over a section of the seminar I just put on with Joey Zatt over at the Lion's Den out in Pennsylvania. So this was a few weeks ago. It's obviously such a small part of the massive 2-day seminar that we put on there, but I wanted to share this with you guys because you signed up for my newsletter. You've been kind of following me along here, and I appreciate that. So I want to share some of this knowledge with you for the ripe price of free, just so you get a taste of what it's like to go to one of my seminars and go to any of the training experiences that myself or the people I work with put out. So like I said, this is such a minor part, but I feel as if it is an impactful part of the weekend because it starts to really break down how we prep to perform, right? So when it comes to training, when it comes to training your clients, if you're a coach or a trainer, or training yourself, if you're an athlete, you need to understand how you perform or how you prep to perform for the day, for the week, for the block, or for the year, right? So these steps are crucial for you to get the most out of your training, but also to make sure that you can pivot in ways where you can still go towards your goal and reach for that goal without putting yourself in undue danger when it comes to injury or pushing too hard when you don't have to or not pushing hard enough, right? So the idea is that we're prepping to perform, and we need to go over kind of how to do that. And we first and foremost need to figure out what your goal is, right? So like I said before, if you're a coach or a trainer, your goal may be to get the most out of your clients or athletes. If you're a powerlifter, a strongman, field sport athlete, your goal is to compete at your sport at the highest level, win a championship, get your nationals bid, get a record, do this, that, and the other thing. Or if you're just looking to get fucking jacked and look good naked, that's a good goal too. But the idea is you need to know specifically what your goal is, because how you follow through with the rest of these steps involves you having a clear understanding of where you want to be, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't know where you want to go, you don't necessarily know the road to get there. Very simple, very straightforward. But I cannot understate the importance of having that goal and understanding what that may be, even if it's just to get fucking jacked and look good naked, right? So we really need to kind of understand from that goal what's required of ourselves in order to reach that goal, right? So understanding what the ultimate goal is great, but we need to understand the breakdown of what that sport is, what that goal will entail, what sort of physical requirements are for that goal, what sort of behavioral requirements are for that goal. If you're a coach or a trainer, you need to understand the positions, postures, and loads of that sport or of that goal that somebody has, right? If they're a baseball player, your needs analysis and your understanding of that sport and what their goal is going to be different than if you're working with like a football player, right? So that needs analysis is very, very important, but it's not just the physical, it's the mental, it's the emotional. It's like if you're a very lazy person and you want to be a world record holder at something, right? Like you have to understand that your behavior, how it is right now, is not going to be the behavior that needs to be in order to meet that goal, right? So really breaking that goal down into pieces and understanding the physical, the mental, and emotional goals or sub goals of that ultimate goal is going to lead you to getting a better understanding of essentially what you need to work on and what you need to train. So after that needs analysis, you need to jump into understanding where you're coming from, right? So for example, if I'm going to be talking to a powerlifter, right? I don't just talk about his total, right? I don't talk about like the squat, the bench, and the deadlift, even though those are the numbers that we want to increase. I also have a conversation based on understanding where they're coming from, what their day job is, what their hobbies are, what sort of things they like to do, what things they don't like to do, what their nutrition's like, what their hydration's like, right? Their day-to-day stress. Are they getting enough sleep? Are they constantly fighting with their significant other, right? You need to have that needs analysis of the person or of yourself to understand where you are coming from, right? Because the idea is very, very simple. We have this end goal, and we need to have that end goal in order for us to be able to shoot at a target, but we need to know where we're aiming from. And that's what this needs analysis for yourself is going to be going over, right? And it's very important. If you're working with a client or you're working with an athlete, this is part of the intake process, right? You need to have a better understanding of who it is you're working for and working with. Because if you don't know where their baseline is, you don't know where they're starting at, you really don't know how to develop a proper plan in order to get them where they want to get, right? So same thing for you if you're an athlete, right? If you're working with a coach, hopefully you've had conversations like this to kind of have a better understanding of what you need to do, when you need to do it, and what you've been doing in the past that may or may not have helped you reach that goal, right? So again, more information is always better. Having these conversations is massively important. And I suggest if you have not had a conversation like this with your coach, have one with your coach. And if your coach is unwilling to have these conversations with you, then I would find another coach. But like I said, all of these things matter, right? So as we have that needs analysis for where we want to go, we need to have that needs analysis of where we're coming from. So let's kind of put this plan into action here, right? Oh, actually, I skipped a slide there. And then obviously you need to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So let's put this into action, right? What's the goal? Got to figure out where we're at now, and we have to understand how we can bridge the gap and pivot. So because there's nobody else here and I'm in my apartment, I've developed Steve. This is Steve, right? As you can see here, he's working very, very hard at his desk job. 45-year-old accountant in tax season. So very careful, in tax season, right? He's a hard driver. He works hard. He works long hours. He's married with 3 kids. He works 8 to 16 hours days, depending on the season. Right now, he's in tax season, so everything is crazy. He's working far more than he usually does. He sits at a desk. He's on his computer. He constantly forgets to eat. He's a caffeine addict, and he is most of the time stressed to the gills. And he constantly complains to you as their coach that there's just simply not enough time in the day to get everything done that we need to. Oh, and he's one of those guys that says, I used to bench 350 in high school, right? Ultimately, his goal is to get jacked and look better naked, but he had mentioned that he wants to potentially compete in powerlifting someday. Do you know somebody like this, or is this kind of like you? Has this massive responsibility outside the gym, but has these aspirations for themselves inside the gym, right? This is very, very common. And I've worked in the general population enough and worked in health and wellness enough to realize how common these traits are, right? And there's going to be a reason you'll see later on why I picked this specific thing. But at the end of the day, this is the information. This is who we're working with. And welcome Steve to the conversation, right? So you're Steve's trainer. He comes in late, right? So he's supposed to have a training session today. He comes in late. He mentions that he didn't eat lunch. He fought with his wife all day. His clients are dicks. He's jacked up on caffeine and says that he is fired up and needs to decompress and just have a killer workout. Keep in mind, he's been sitting all day. Keep in mind, it's tax season, so he's not sleeping very well. He's working a lot. His stress is through the roof. He's jacked up on caffeine. All of these things. He's heightened up, right? He's heightened to the new next level, and he thinks cognitively that he is really, really ready to hit that heavy, heavy lower body day that you have planned. So what do you do as a coach, as an athlete, right? I know athletes that are in the same position. They worked hard all day. They just want to get to the gym and throw some heavy-ass weights around. What do you do, right? What do we do in this situation? You're his coach. You need to figure out the best plan for him to reach his goal of realistically just being more jacked and looking better naked with the potential to compete. But there is no contest. There is no meet. There is nothing locked in. He is really there for his health and wellness and to look better, right? To get a little bit stronger. Keep that in mind. So we need to understand the goal for the day in conjunction with the long-term goal, right? So the goal for the day, he was supposed to come in, hit a lower body strength session with some squats and some deadlifts. He was looking to hit potentially a new squat PR, get some good reps in with the deadlift, and overall throw some heavier weight around. In the rest of his program, this is probably the most taxing day. This is the day that he throws the most weight around. It gets the most excited for. He tends to jack himself up on pre-workout and caffeine leading into this, and this is the day that he looks the most forward to. Keep in mind, like I said before, his long-term goal is to potentially compete one day. Like I said, there's nothing set in stone, but he really just wants to get jacked and look better naked. So this is the breakdown of what he needs to accomplish for the day, right? Lower body day, squats and deads. The positions, postures, and loads he'll be working with, and the movements, anti-extension, anti-flexion of that torso, right? We need to make sure that he has the stability front and back and side to side, and in that rotation a little bit as well, that he can stabilize that spine and stay safe, stay healthy. Hip extension, hip flexion, a little bit of hip rotation, hip abduction and adduction, as well as the ample ankle mobility, right? So if you're a coach, if you're an athlete, looking and understanding what movement patterns you're going to be needing to do and looking at the positions and postures you've been in all day can help you get a better understanding of how you prep to perform for that specific day. So we understand the positions, postures, and loads he'll need, right? Heavy lower body day, heavy weights, hip extension, hinging, squatting, really like full body movements. Everything kind of needs to be firing on all cylinders, and he needs to move the heaviest weight on this day, right? So now we need to figure out where they're at. So how do we do that? We go through some sort of an assessment, right? And if I was working with Steve here, I would go through just some very basic gatekeeper exercises to determine, well, the gatekeeper exercises, kind of back up here, that I would pick for him are based on the squat and the deadlift, right? We need to make sure that he has ample lower body mobility, right, through the hips, being able to get those positions that he needs to maintain those quality positions under load, as well as the stability, the ability to resist force in those positions. If you guys are interested in learning more about gatekeeper exercises, shoot me an email back, and I can create a little bit presentation just like this one, going over gatekeeper exercises, the assessment process, and how I actually work with my clients to make sure that they're in a position that gets the most out of their training for that day while mitigating injury and still progressing regardless if they're at their best for that day or not. So like I said, if you're interested in that, email me back. And upon our assessment of Steve, this fucking guy is like the Tin Man. He's not moving well. He doesn't feel good. And what we do as a coach or a trainer, we need to make that decision, right? If you're an athlete, if you go through these gatekeepers and you have these assessments in place to give yourself a better understanding of where you are, you really, really, really need to make either the decision that you are going to, let me see the right button here, bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be, or pivot, right? So an example of bridging the gap, we need to intervene utilizing various modalities, right? Mobility, it could be stretching, it could be heat, it could be stim, it could be cold, it could be vibration. Those things all work to various degrees, and there are certain specific times that you would use one versus the other. And it's a means of getting ourselves into a better system or a better way of moving that will help benefit us going forward and potentially get us from where we are to that performance zone or that performance level that we need to. We can also work with stability, with proprioception, awareness, activation, movement, these things, right? And not only that, like we can have conversations with Steve or with ourselves and to really kind of understand, like, what are you feeling? What do you feel is tight, is uncomfortable, doesn't feel good? And just kind of intervene the ways that you have learned in the past. Again, if you're interested in understanding how you intervene better and how you can assess these things, shoot me an email back. I can set up a presentation for that as well. Or if you want to talk about your training in specifics, sign up for a consultation. I run them all the time. And I think it's a great way for you to get a better understanding of what you're doing in your training and how you can better implement these things into your training to get more out of it. So Like I said, we bridge the gap. If we're choosing to take this path, we need to understand how we do that and with the tools that we need. So, for example, if I was working with Steve, I may run him through couch stretch for 5 breaths, 90-90 stretch for 5 breaths, pigeon stretch, and then I have him set up in a goblet hold walking lunge, right? Stabilize the core a little bit, stabilize that torso, and then we get him under the bar for his main movement, right? So I would run him through this a few different times, and each time we go through this, we need to see that the needle is getting pushed farther into that zone of performance so that we can continue on and train as we were supposed to on paper, right? So the idea is we roll through this a few times, add weight to the bar after each round if things are feeling good, right? And what we do is as we work up in weight, we reduce the things that we do before the main back squat. And on a day like this, we may actually find that after that main movement, we hit 1 or 2 more things and we cut it for the day, right? The main goal of today was to hit the heavy back squat, the heavy deads. And then if he doesn't have enough in the tank and it feels like we'll be digging a bigger hole, we can just reduce the amount of accessory work, reduce the fluff, and get the hell out of there, right? So that's an example of bridging the gap if that's a viable option, right? If you have the correct data, the subjective and objective data as their coach or trainer that lets you know that they're going in the right direction and that they're not just digging themselves a deeper hole. On the other hand, if you are realizing like, listen, like this is just not working today. We don't have what we need to push it as hard as we possibly can, right? Or as hard as the program for that day requires. We need to pivot, right? And how do we pivot? We increase that external stability. So think about utilizing something like a leg press versus a back squat. You can still push weight, but now you're in a position where you're more externally stabilized and do not require the internal stability that a back squat needs, right? It takes a lot of the, I'm not going to say danger, but like it takes a lot of the variables out of the movement and it really boils it down to what was the most important. Lower body strength, right? So if we can get that lower body strength without forcing him to get into that back squat position, because realistically he's fried neurologically, he's fried mentally, his body's just not cooperating and he feels like shit, then fuck it. So let's do that. Let's push him in a direction that we can push him for the day and then reassess on the next couple training sessions, right? So it's not a big deal. You can also decrease work sets. You can decrease the load. But realistically, in these situations, I would focus in on making sure that you're performing exercises in a way or performing exercises that are going to help him match his goals or her goals or your goals, whoever it may be, while reducing the potential for risk or potential for fatigue being the limiting factor, right? So as we know about Steve, we don't need to worry about a meet. There's no meet involved, right? There's no date that we need to get really, really jacked and tan for. There is no competition. There's no contest, right? There's no deadline. And he's really just trying to get stronger. So what we can do is really just kind of focus in on getting through today, helping him with some sort of stress-reducing workout, stress-reducing habits, and have conversations with him. And like I said, that communication is key, right? Because as the coach or as an athlete, you need to realize that not every day is going to be 100%. You're going to have days where you need to pivot in order to maintain your progress. And there are days where you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward, and that's totally fine. Because if you can get into the gym when your body is normally you would say, no, I'm fucking cool with this. I'm not going today. I just feel like shit. And if you can still get in there and get some work in, that's better than nothing. And it's better than doing absolutely zero work at all. It may not be the exact thing you had written in your program, and that's totally fine. That's the difference between being open-minded and being able to pivot and being so concrete and structured in your program for no real reason, right? Like, if you do not have a very clear goal and you're just trying to do this to get a little bit stronger, to get more in shape, then you do not need to push yourself as hard as a program says on every single day if you're not ready to do so safely. The point of this pivot is to help him still maintain that positive momentum when life happens. And that's the thing. Life will fucking happen. Life happens all the time. And you can either accept that and try to adjust and make the most out of a situation, or you can try to just keep running your head into the wall, potentially get hurt, and set yourself back even further. Thinking about this situation specifically, I know that my client Steve has been sitting at a desk all day. I know he hasn't eaten any food. I know he's probably dehydrated. I know he's jacked up on caffeine. I know he says that he's ready to go, but when I do the objective tests of the gatekeeper exercises, and I notice that he can't even stand on one leg for longer than 2 seconds, we're going to have a problem if I try to max back squat him or put him through a max deadlift workout. It doesn't make any sense. If I have a client or an athlete that I'm working with who says, I went into the gym today, I did the gatekeeper work, and I felt like shit, I needed to pivot, this is what we do. This is the type of stuff that we do. We're like, hey, adjust this. My clients will message me, and I'll be like, cool, do this instead, hit these sets and reps, and get the fuck out of there. Because realistically, you're not going to be 100% every training session. And if you do not have a meet you are competing for, there's no fucking reason that you need to potentially put yourself in a shitty situation if you're not ready to go. That's the cool thing about having this sort of framework and having this sort understanding and open chain loop with a coach or a trainer. You need to be able to have this conversation and be able to have this communication back and forth, right? If you're working with somebody that's not able to communicate with you, then you are in a position where you are not getting the most out of your training, and you are going to find that, honestly, you're going to be more fried and more prone to tweaks, setbacks, injuries than you have to be. So, that was a nice little 20-minute rant there. But if you enjoyed this video, please shoot me a message back. I respond to all the emails back for these. And like I said, if you are looking to get more out of your training, get more out of what you're doing already, set up a consultation with me. I can go over what you're doing. I can put my 2 cents in, and it can save you a lot of time. It can save you a lot of just headaches of running into the wall. And I want to provide you with the principles that you can make better decisions with going forward. So guys, like I said, if you enjoyed this, please shoot me an email back. Let me know you enjoyed it. And until the next time I see you, I hope you enjoy. And that's all I got, guys. Have a good night and enjoy your week.